Hello and welcome to our second session of our kickoff series for the WEAR webinars on the topic of rebuilding the fashion industry. I'm Kelly Drennan. I'm the founder of Fashion Takes Action, which is based here in Toronto in Canada. And our nonprofit's mission is to advance sustainability across the entire fashion system. We normally would be hosting this conference for the 7th time in person, but of course, we've had to do a pivot along with many of our global partners and colleagues to now offer you a digital format. And we did poll the industry back in the spring and wanted to know about the format and the content. And so we've decided to offer this as a free monthly series. And of course, the opening topic, which was the most popular that you wanted to hear about, was rebuilding the fashion industry. So I'm very excited to have these experts with us today to share some insight into how traceability can build better transparency. And we're just going to give it a minute or so for people to come in. And in the meantime, as you're arriving, if you don't mind using the chat function, just to let us know what city you're tuning in from, that would be great. I'm also going to issue a poll just to see who is in the audience. So if you can please also answer the poll, that would be great. And we'll just give it another minute or so. Great. Hello, Nicole from LA. Okay. This is great. Burlington, Ontario, that's my hometown. Awesome. All right. And so what exactly do we mean by traceability? I think we're going to get into that, but really at Fashion Takes Action, we consider it knowing your supply chain, and it's practically impossible to be transparent or show your supply chain when you don't actually know it. Traceability enables enables trust with the customer, but it also allows brands to track beyond tier 1 to strengthen supplier relationships and to really amplify the worker voice and also understand working conditions across the global supply chain. So without further ado, because we have a limited time, I'm excited to introduce our two experts today. We have Rishi Rajan from TrusTrace, and we have Saskia Block from Fenix Outdoor International, which has the brands Fjallraven and Royal Robbins, among others. So welcome to the two of you. I will now exit and allow you to engage in this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kelly. So I will give a quick introduction about myself and TrusTrace. I'll probably just use some slides just for to move the conversation forward. But just let me know if it's fine, right? So again, my name is Rishi. Thanks so much for having me here. And I'm based out of Stockholm in Sweden, right? I originally come from India, and I moved to Sweden about 6 years back. And what happened was one of my co-founders moved back to India from the UK and said he wanted to get into organic farming. What we realized then was that the local situation in the hometown where he comes from had very poor water conditions and so on. And I come from Bangalore, which has had an explosion over the last 25, 30 years in terms of people coming in, etc., poor infrastructure and so on. And then when we said, okay, can we do something to sort of improve the local conditions? Because the water was horrible. I mean, the color of the water was different due to the dyes and so on. And the more we dug deeper into this, we figured that it is not a local problem. This is more of a global problem. There are brands and consumers in other parts of the world who are consuming these products, but have no idea about the devastation that it is causing on local ecosystems, right? So this sort of pushed us to say, hey, how can we bring this to the consumers? How can we make conscious consumerism you know, a mainstream topic, right? And that was the genesis of TrusTrace. So we said, okay, let us, you know, talk to forward-looking brands and see if they want to share this information with their consumers, right? And started with some very small but forward-looking brands like Houdini and Filippa K in Sweden. And today we are working with about 30 odd brands across Europe. More importantly, almost 4,000 odd suppliers across 26 countries. And one of the brands that sort of came forward during the first and second year was, or the group that came forward was Fenix. So I will loop in Saskia shortly, where she can introduce, you know, what Fenix does as well and their philosophy. But what we understood was by working with these brands, we were able to, you know, communicate this story to end consumers, and this was critical so that consumers are able to buy the right kind of products, and even brands can take the right decisions. So many brands we figured didn't know beyond tier 1 and tier 2, right, of suppliers. So we were like, how can we enable this through a digital system, right? So that was the genesis of TrusTrace. So the eventual goal of TrusTrace is to enable brands and retailers, and then of course end consumers, to see the entire supply chain, what happens at every tier. You know, what if the conditions, the necessary conditions for environmental and social parameters are met at each level, right? And then eventually, how can they make a change? If we can give them a risk analysis of the supply chain, and if they can, you know, either change materials or change, you know, suppliers, or more importantly, ask the suppliers to make the necessary changes in terms of the way they use water, the way they use their machinery, and so on, and also help the local ecosystem, right? So this was the genesis of TrusTrace, and one of the brands or one of the groups that we met initially was the Fenix group. And this was a very symbiotic relationship that we have, because the brands such as Fjallraven and Royal Robbins and others are very, very well known in the outdoor industry, and also for their forward thinking nature when it comes to sustainability, right? They had put in a lot of effort over the last 15-20 years to ensure that they were very sustainable. They used the right kind of materials, they worked with the right kind of partners, had very good control on what what kind of supply chains they were working with, right? So they brought in that expertise, while TrusTrace had the technology expertise, the services expertise, as well as since this co-founder came from one of the largest textile exporting hubs in Asia, we had a lot of connects into the supplier ecosystem there. So that helped us understand, as to how the suppliers are thinking, why they would share data or not share data, right? And how can we make it easier for them? So that was, and this partnership has been going on for the last 1.5 years, and going from strength to strength. We started with a couple of brands. Now we've already started working with with Fenix's retail and e-commerce platforms, which is basically Globetrotter, Freelufts, and others. So to help push this with some of their partner brands as well. So the good part about Fenix is whatever they have learned, they're willing to share this with other partner brands and other suppliers as well. So with this, I would like to invite Saskia, who is the sustainability manager of the Fenix Group and manages multiple programs across the group. Saskia?
Hello and good morning, everyone. I'm based also in Europe, as Hiroshi is. I'm based in Germany, in Hamburg. So we already have afternoon. Thank you, Hiroshi, for doing the introduction for us. So as Hiroshi just said, I'm working on the Fenix Holding, which own several outdoor brands, and the probably most known one, and also in Canada and probably India from the participants I saw, is Fjallraven. And Fjallraven is originally from Sweden, where my background is from. So you get like a little bit of a feeling how the outdoor world looks like in our head. And so when we started looking into like a system to kind of organize our supply chain on a holding level, because you need to understand that Fenix is born out of Fjallraven, but bought over the years more brands like Royal Robbins. That's like the newest purchase. You know, like 2 years ago, I think we bought them. We need a system to have an overview of all our suppliers from the whole perspective, from the whole group. And we looked into different systems. How can we see the transparency among or beyond the tier 1? Because sometimes we have a close collaboration with the tier 2 suppliers, which, because we nominate our fabrics, we have our own fabrics, especially for Fjallraven. You might know the G1000 if you ever bought a Fjallraven product. But beyond that, the knowledge is quite small, as a lot of other textile companies or other industries have. So we looked into different system providers, and then I spoke to different companies as Zalando, because the CSR world is always very close. And you might know Zalando, I don't know, it's probably more in Germany, Europe. Anyway, so we talked to other NGOs who could help us finding the right system in order to gain transparency and also trace our product down the chain back to the source, really back to the crop field, because we want to understand every piece of our product. And then the name TrusTrace always came into our ears, and then we thought, hey, let's have a chat with Hiroshi and his team. And since they're also based in Stockholm, it was quite easy to come together. And we started having a pilot with Fjallraven, I think 1.5 years ago, and tested a few products, how it could work and how we could win our suppliers, because this is like the biggest piece, I guess, in our work, to win the suppliers to share the information further down the chain with us. And so this is like an ongoing process, and I got to win more of our brands to also use the TrusTrace system to upload our styles, and not only Fjallraven, but also Royal Robbins and the brands you saw before. And the CSR and transparency is, you know, the core value of the Fenix Outdoor Group. We've written it down in the Fenix way, which is our core Bible, my boss always says. So it's very important for us to understand everything and also move on with sustainability in our supply chain. And we can only do that when we have the data and the context in our supply chain.
Thanks for that, Saskia. So yeah, just taking a step back, I think you just touched upon the Fenix way. This is something that we have spoken about multiple times, but it could be good if you can sort of share the sustainability philosophy at Fjallraven and the Fenix Group, because that sort of is the core and drives everything with respect to how you work with your internal teams, your suppliers, as well as the communication to your customers, right? So
Yeah.
if you can share a little more, that actually, I think that is the driver, I would say, when it comes to, you know, saying, hey, I want to do traceability and transparency. I mean, I think that is traceability, transparency follows the core philosophy that you have. So it would be good if you can just share that. And then of course, why traceability is critical, and yeah, and what transparency actually means to for the Fenix Group.
Yeah. So the first version of the Fenix Way was published on our phoenixoutdoor.se website in 2012. And it's based on our own compass, so to say. I mean, since we're outdoor, we use compasses, as we also own a company who produces compasses based in the US called Brunton. We use this as a description for our internal core values. And so North stands for nature. The S for South is for society, the W for well-being, and the E for East is economy. And we wrote down our core values in all these chapters. And one major value is to also gain responsibility in our supply chain. And this is why we partnered up with the Fjallraven Association. Maybe some of you know that because it's also based in the US in Washington, D.C. It was founded in times of Bill Clinton with universities together and also NGOs to make sure companies really know their chain and also respect human rights in everything they produce. So we're a member at the Fjallraven Association. We are accredited since 2018, and they also ask us to be honest and transparent on our supply chain. So we post our tier 1 supply chain of all our suppliers since a couple of years on our website. So this was the first step in being transparent. And the next steps will be to also talk about the tier 2. But what is more important to us and always is to really have an understanding internally before talking about it. And this is why we use TrusTrace because the Excel data sometimes doesn't help you gain all the necessary data you need to really understand what piece and part is in your supply chain when you look at a certain product. Yeah, Hiroshi, that's for the moment, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, so, and sorry, just to touch upon the aspect about, you said you're sharing data on your website, including your tier 1, and I know you've expressed that eventually you want to do it at a product level and go all the way to the raw materials, right? But what do the customers really expect? And what do you think is the future of transparency? Does everybody want to do it? Right? Since you're collaborating so much more with, at least I know you collaborate a lot with the European Outdoor Group, and of course the various players in Europe and other CSR teams, right? So do you think this is just a temporary phase, or yeah? So what does that actually mean, and what do the customers really want?
So I think there are like two questions. What is it we want, and what is it the outside world want? And for us, I can say that we want to have full transparency in all the things we do, all the actions, which belongs to the Fenix Outdoor Group. So that's like the key before you decide on doing something. And then, since we're a member of the Sustainable Apparel Coalition, maybe some of you know it's called SAC in a shortcut. Their vision is also to become more transparent, and not only within your own actions, but also to the customers. So this is referring to your second question, Hiroshi, because the SAC wants every customer to understand how sustainable the brand and the product is in the end. How much impact does it have on the environment and also on the people who produce it? So they're working on that with different modules. And then on the other hand, there are retailers like our own retail chain, as you mentioned before, Hiroshi. It's called the Fjallraven Retailer. We have it, it's based in Europe, basically, in Scandinavia and in Germany. We also have stores in the US and in China. With Fjallraven, we have the Greener Choice certificate. So that's like a first sustainability audit, so to say, with 9 criteria, which measures also transparency. So how transparent are you as a brand when producing this certain product? Do you share it somewhere publicly? How do you communicate where it's made? So this is also one requirement that we have to follow because we designed it on our own, which puts a little bit of a pressure on ourselves and our brands to be more transparent. And I believe being transparent is the only way to really show everyone that you can be trusted as a brand, and that you stand behind all the actions you take. And another point is that more and more national action plans are coming from different countries. The European Union is discussing it right now, that you have to take action, that you have to know, where your product is coming from, and that at some point you might have to pay money in order to produce somewhere, which is not allowed by your government. So yeah, there are a lot of criteria which, transparency is not a if, but it's like a must. That's what I would say.
Yeah, and I think from the I think since March, when COVID was declared a pandemic, we thought, okay, here goes sustainability and transparency. Everybody is going to talk about survival. Believe it or not, I haven't been this busy in my career, right? It's been, large brands, medium-sized brands. We are talking about 15, $20 billion brands who have come and said, hey, we need to fast track traceability and transparency. And people who had, or brands that had targets for 2025, 2030 have pulled it back and said, we want to do this by 2023. And that has been so heartening, because March, April, all our forecasts, etc., was, said, okay, we said we are not going to hit any of, the targets in terms of our numbers, or even, what we want to achieve, right? We are obviously, while we're talking about quarter-on-quarter growth, which is what everybody talks about, but we actually want to make a difference, right? And this was so heartening when so many brands came forward and said, hey, we want to, while survival is key, but we want to ensure that this goes forward. And there are many brands who said, we are stopping our other programs that are not related to sustainability and putting in more money into sustainability. So I think that has been a very big revelation. And I think a few of them also reached out to you to talk about how they could use TrusTrace. So I think that way you've been a pretty good ambassador for us. So that's been very nice. So I am just trying to see if there are any questions for us on here.
I can maybe add, Hiroshi, since the pandemic, it's more of a vision to also really understand where your products are made in order to shift the risk your business might face, because this will not be the last pandemic we are facing, where we have to face. So we have to really understand how we are set up. And in the end, you also have to understand if there are any issues, like currently in China and Xinjiang, do you have any cotton coming from there which goes into your products, which you cannot sell in the US right now because there's a sanction from the US government. And if you don't know, then you're not prepared for any businesses, I would say.
Sure. And one thought I had was, so to enable something like this, right? So it's important that various industry players collaborate. Even peers, right? So brands that compete with, say, the Fjallravens of the world and so on. You need to maybe work with a Peak Performance, or maybe a North Face or a Columbia, whoever it is, right? So do you really think brands can collaborate when it comes to sustainability? Because this has been a question that's come up many times. Everybody has said, hey, yes, we need to collaborate. From the biggest forums possible, like the Copenhagen Fashion Summit and all the outdoor events that we've been to, everybody has said we need to collaborate. The brands need to collaborate, suppliers need to collaborate, the certifying bodies and the audit bodies, everybody needs to, and even the governments, right? But do you see that happening? I know some small pockets and very informal ways.
Well, I can only speak from us. I think the outdoor world is very well connected. As you mentioned, we have different outdoor organizations in Europe, but also in the US and Canada, and we're very well connected. We're competitors as a business, yes, but when it comes back to sustainability, we all want to see the change for the better, right? We all want to protect the nature with the products we still do for our business. So from our perspective, yes, we do collaborate with other businesses, other brands in order to do changes. And if it comes from to the SAC, that we do trainings together with the suppliers, that we share audit results, that we talk about TrusTrace, how we can really use the blockchain in the end, which you represent. From our side, we are open for collaboration and we do live it already.
Perfect. I think we will try and take some of these questions that are here. Mary asks, what are your definitions of transparency? What does it mean to you? I can take a stab at it. So from our perspective, transparency means sharing. So whatever data you're collecting and analyzed, you share that with internal stakeholders as well as external stakeholders, and be as clean as possible. So you don't sort of hide the data, right? So that you are making the right decisions. So this is at least what we have learned as a technology partner. But Saskia, maybe you have a different take on it.
I think there are two definitions of transparency. Whatever you see from an outside perspective, you as a customer or you as a user, and from our side. And my goal is right now to be transparent internally, and then decide on how much knowledge do you really want to share and get out there, and what does it do to everyone? Can you really process every information? So that's a question we probably have to discuss on a different time, but that's the definition I would have.
And the next question from Anita is, which Canadian companies do you know of that are doing it right in regards to traceability? I don't know any. We haven't interacted with any Canadian company so far, but maybe Saskia from the outdoor group, maybe you have interacted with.
I know that Lululemon, the yoga company, because they're a member of the Fair Labor Association, as I mentioned earlier, and hence I know the sustainability manager because she's also German and she moved to Canada a year back. I know that they're also working on transparency, and that's a requirement from the FLA. So it's, yeah, that's one example I know from Canada. Sorry, it's only one, but at least one.
Yeah, so before I go back to Marie's question again, so I just want to finish up with Anita's. Why are some companies more likely to focus on traceability than others, especially when it comes to posting this information online? So maybe Saskia, you're the right person to answer that.
That's a tricky question. I think so. Fenix is a family-owned business. And so we do not need to share any information publicly, even though we're listed on the stock market in Sweden. So I think it's the decision of every CEO who runs a business, how much you want to talk about it. Because as I mentioned earlier with a definition of transparency, if you open the Pandora box, if you leave out all the data, how do you process everything? And how do you make sure all the data is always correct, and that you not get criticized? So our understanding and our definition is we really have to understand what we are doing and where we're doing what in order to talk about it. And I think you can be open about everything, but you always have to make sure you're responsible in what you talk about. Does that make sense?
So, and I think so Marie's question again is, do you see it as a tool or a goal? So I'm unsure as to what you're referring to, Marie. Is it the TrusTrace tool you're referring to, or transparency? So if it is transparency that you're referring to, it will be, yes, it's a tool, I would say, not the end goal. Once you sort of share this data, it keeps improving, right? So you figure out something that is not working, or maybe something else that is needed by the by the customers, or even governing bodies and so on, right? So you keep improving over a period of time. So you start somewhere, you sort of get a baseline, and then keep moving from there. So it is, I wouldn't say it is the end goal, but yes, it is a start for many of the brands that we work with, right? And so Kelly has just come back, and I'm thinking she has a few questions.
Well, actually, it's time. This conversation could be much longer as we're discovering all of these topics that we're covering. We could go on and on, really. So just for the sake of time, I know we have a lot of attendees that have signed up for all of our sessions today. So this is a good opportunity for them to take a break, and if they're on the Eastern Standard Time Zone, then to grab something to eat. But I just definitely, really appreciate this discussion, and that you joined us today to share your insights. I do think, personally, to answer that last question, I wonder if traceability is the tool and then transparency is the goal. So, that's kind of, I think, how we look at it, because you can't be transparent unless you actually know what's going on in your supply chain. And so on that note, I shared in the chat the link to our next session, which is not till 1:30 p.m. And that is on transparency as a tool for change. So we'll be hearing from Fashion Revolution on their global campaign, Who Made My Clothes, the pressure on brands to become more transparent, and also a little bit more insight into their transparency index. On that note, Saskia, I just wonder if your brands have actually been ranked by the Fashion Revolution Transparency Index, and how you ended up doing.
Actually, we have with Fjallraven. Now you caught me on which place we got. I think we're like in the good middle. H&M is number one. Patagonia's in front of us, so we still have some homework to do. And this was the first time they asked us to join this index, and which also helps us to drive the discussion internally. What we still need to do. So that was interesting, an interesting, very heavy workloaded process, to be honest.
Yes, it's a rigorous process for sure. Okay, well, thank you both so much for joining us. And yeah, we hopefully you can join us in our next sessions. And for all of those who've attended, please do register if you haven't yet for the next session at 1:30 p.m. That's it from here.
Thank you, Kelly. Yeah, I see a few of them have. There are a few more questions. If anybody wants, they can just reach out to me. So
yeah, do you want to put, maybe either of you, if you want to throw your contact information into the chat, then if anybody does have further questions, they can reach out to you directly.
I can just drop my email ID.
We can do that. Thank you, Kelly, for everything, and thank you for the listeners.
Thank you both. I won't end this until, do you have your contact info, Saskia?
I do. There we go.
Okay. Thank you both so much. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.